AP World History Modern Exam, Section 2, Free Response. Do not open this packet or this booklet until you are told to do so. Instructions. The questions for Section 2 are printed in this booklet. You may use this booklet to organize your answers and for scratch work, but you must write your answers on the line pages provided for each question. The proctor will announce the beginning and the end of the reading period. You are advised to spend 15 minutes more for time and a half reading the questions, planning your answers. Go to question 1, the document-based question, or the DBQ. If you have time, you may also read questions 2, 3, and 4. You may begin writing your responses before the reading period is over. Section 2 of this exam requires answers in essay form. Write clearly and legibly. Circle the number of the question you are answering on the top of each page of this booklet. Begin each answer on a new page. Do not skip lines. Cross out errors you make. Crossed out work will not be scored. Manage your time carefully. The proctor will announce the suggested time for each part, but you may proceed freely from one part to the next. Go to question 2, 3, or 4 if you finish question 1 early. You may review your responses if you're finished before the end of the exam is announced. This page may be used for planning answers. Notes written in this booklet on this page will not be scored. Write all of your responses in the Section 2 booklet. Section 2 questions and documents begin on page 4. This is the World History Modern, Section 2. The total time for standard time is 1 hour 40 minutes. For time and a half, it will be increased. Document 1 is a DBQ, a document-based question. They suggest reading and writing time is 1 hour or 1 1/2 hours. It's suggested that you spend 15 minutes or 22 minutes reading the documents and 45 or an hour and 15 minutes writing your response. You may begin writing your response before the reading period is over. Directions. Read question 1. Question 1 is based on the accompanying documents. The documents have been edited for the purpose of this exercise. In your response, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis or claim that establishes the line of reasoning. Describe a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. Support an argument in response to the prompt using at least 6 documents. Use at least one additional piece of specific historical evidence beyond that found in the documents relevant to the argument about the prompt. For at least 3 documents, explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, and/or audience is relevant to the argument. Use evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the prompt. Go on to the next page. The prompt is, evaluate the extent to which African countries were able to conduct independent policies during the Cold War period. Document 1. Source is the United States Congress, House of Representatives, Committee on Un-American Activities, How Communists Menace Vital Materials. This map was published in 1956. You see here how communists menace vital materials. A legend below the map provides assessments of the Committee of Un-American Activities regarding Soviet activities in various parts of the world. The assessment of Africa, the arrow number 3, reads Africa, Soviet encouragement of nationalist terrorists, stirring up racial tensions, psychological warfare against the U.S. and West based on colonialism and color. Go on to the next page. Document 2 is an editorial in the Evening News, an official newspaper of the ruling Ghanaian Convention People's Party, published on the eve of the first Conference of Independent African States, Accra, Ghana, 1958. When it is an African uprising against tyranny and oppression, the imperialists call it terrorism. When it is white people taking up arms against similar conditions, they call it a just cause. For example, the recent Hungarian uprising, referencing a Hungarian revolution in 1956 in which mass protests toppled the country's communist government, leading a Soviet-led military invasion and the forcible reimposition of communist rule, was universally praised as a just opposition against suppression, and the Hungarians who participated in it were christened freedom fighters. But what the Russians did to the Hungarians that the free world made so much fuss about was the same thing that the British did in Kenya and the French are doing in Algeria. It is high time that we be blunt and impartial in our condemnation of imperialism, regardless of which power is carrying it out. We have no love for Russia and are not interested in the dirty business of Eastern-Western power bloc policies. But so many in the West are ready to accuse Russia of her brutalities, yet defend Western imperialism because they claim it is saving Africa from the terrorism of self-rule. Document 3. Source: United States Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, Director Allen Dulles, secret diplomatic telegram to the CIA agents in the Congolese capital of Leopoldville, August 26, 1960. In your dispatch on August 18th, you expressed the opinion that the Congo is experiencing a classic communist takeover, a reference to the May 1960 Congolese election, which brought to power Patrice Lumumba, independent Congo's first prime minister. Whether or not Lumumba himself is a communist or just playing the communist game to help him solidify his power, you state that there might be little time left in which to take action if we were to avoid another Cuba. In high quarters here in Washington, there is a clear-cut conclusion that as long as Lumumba continues to hold high office, the inevitable result will at best be chaos, and at worst, it would pave the way to communist takeover in Congo, with disastrous consequences for the U.S. and for the interests of the free world. Consequently, we conclude that Lumumba's removal must be urgent and the prime objective that should be the highest priority of our covert action in Congo. Go on to the next page. Document 4. Source: Franz Fanon, French West Indian political philosopher and activist, from Towards the African Revolution, a book published in 1964. It is surely not by chance that the hand of Moscow is discovered in an almost stereotyped way behind each demand of national independence put forth by colonial people. This is because any difficulty that is put in the way of the supremacy of the West is seen as a threat to its economic power and its military interests. The position taken by a few newly independent countries, which are determined to remain outside the policy of the superblocks, has introduced a new dimension into the balance of forces in the world. Adopting the so-called policy of positive neutralism, of non-dependence, of non-commitment, of underdeveloped countries that are awakening from a long slumber of slavery and of oppression, are trying to remain outside of any warlike involvement, in order to devote themselves to the urgent economic task of staving off hunger to the improvement of man's lot. Document 5. Source: Victor Baskin, Soviet diplomatic official in Poland, briefing to Polish officials in Soviet activities in Somalia, 1971. After the 1960 military coup in Somalia and the assumption of power of the Great Zayed Barre Revolutionary Council, many positive elements in Somali domestic and foreign policies can be observed. Therefore, the Soviet Union is planning to comprehensively activate its relations within that country, including the following activities undertaken so far. In the economic field, the Soviet Union offered Somalia a long-term loan of 40 million rubles. The sending of additional Soviet specialists to Somalia was also agreed. Currently, there are 111 Soviet specialists outside the military field in Somalia, including 5 professionals working in various Somali government departments. 32 Soviet teachers and 18 Soviet doctors are planning to travel to Somalia this year. There are 350 Somalis, except those at military academies, according to the study currently studying in the Soviet Union. In the military field, the Soviet Union also provides military assistance to Somalia. The Somali army, numbering 14,000 troops, is most expectantly equipped with the Soviet weaponry and is trained by Soviet military specialists. Somali staff officers are trained in the Soviet Union. We seek to further promote relations in Somalia, and we hope that other Soviet countries, including Poland, will also develop the economic political ties with that country. It would be desirable, therefore, to coordinate USSR and the other socialist countries' activities in that regard. Document 6. Source: Janez Huzar, Yugoslav ambassador to Somalia. Report to the Yugoslavian government, sent from Mogadishu, Somalia, 1975. Although many questions remain open to the reason behind President Saad's recent invitation to the Americans to inspect the Soviet-built military facilities in the Somali port of Berbera in the mid-1970s, the relationship between Saad Barre's government and the Soviet Union began to deteriorate because of the Soviets' unwillingness to back Somali claims over parts of neighboring Ethiopia. I believe it was aimed at demonstrating to the world that the Soviet-friendly Somalia can retain control over its military installations. This affirms the Somali policy of independence and non-alignment. President Saad must also intend to lessen Somali's diplomatic isolation in order to engage with the Arab League, the Organization of African Unity, and other non-aligned countries. The Soviet Union took advantage of the locals, building military complexes according to Soviet needs. This is taking a toll on Somalia's path towards true independence. The American inspections, although humiliating, are improving Somali-American relations. They hint at possible futures where the United States provides economic and humanitarian assistance in order to match Soviet influence. This would expand the Somali leadership's room for maneuvering. Document 7. Source: Robert Mugabe, leader of Zimbabwe's African National Union, ZANU, a political and military organization leading to the end of white minority rule in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. Interview in the Mozambique, based newspaper Tempo, 1978. We are not a creation of the Soviet Union or Cuba. We are a creation of Zimbabwe. Our army is a manifestation of the nationalist desire of our people, a product of the history of our country. It is true that the Soviets gave us aid, as did the entire international Soviet community. ZAPU, another Zimbabwean military group fighting against minority rule in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, trained militants in Cuba and after 1967, and so did we. But although we trained cadres in the socialist countries, this did not transform our army into a Russian or Chinese army. Our war is supported by the progressive world, and it is true that our objective is the liquidation of imperialism and colonialism. But it is the Zimbabwean people who are fighting the war. No one can deny us the right to seek aid from our friends and allies, but it will always be the Zimbabweans who direct the struggle. This is the end of documents for question 1. You can write your response in the booklet and then go on to questions 2, 3, or 4.